Go check your thermostat right now. Maybe it says 68 degrees or 72. You set it and totally forgot about it. But for over 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors faced this brutal challenge every winter. They had no smart thermostat, no insulation, no real walls, just their hands, animal bones, and a cold so bitter it would freeze a modern human in hours. So how did they not only survive, but actually thrive? The answer is not what you think. It will completely change how you view your own home. Let's start with what that cold truly felt like. We're talking minus 40 on the Eurasian steppe. Not the chilly air you feel walking to your car, but the kind of deep freeze where bare skin starts to die in minutes, where breathing actually hurts, where the wind does not just chill you, it literally hunts you. A modern human dropped into an ice age winter without any prep would probably be dead before sunrise. The common image is always the same. Shivering cave dwellers hunched around a tiny fire, barely making it through the night. But archaeology tells a completely different story, a story of true engineers. Here's the first thing archaeologists got wrong about your ancestors. They did not live in caves at Kostroma in Russia. Going back 800,000 years, scientists found circular pits up to 8 feet deep, 12 feet wide. These were not natural formations. Old tool marks in soil prove they were carefully dug out to those exact depths. Why? Because at 6 to 8 feet under the surface, the ground temperature stays 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the freezing air above. Our ancestors didn't fight the freeze, they went below it, but the true building genius came later. At Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic 26,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered winter shelters with sturdy walls built from several layers, each one playing a precise insulating role. Inside, they used hides fur facing inward, trapping warm body heat against bodies. Right outside, dried grass and moss wicked moisture away. Outermost, woven mats of reed and bark, windproof but breathable enough to let dampness escape before it could freeze and wreck the shelter from within. This was no primitive guesswork. This was intentional. Layered thermal engineering, the exact same principle behind the insulation inside your walls today. Modern builders use vapor barriers, synthetic foam, and weatherproofing. Your Ice Age ancestors used hides, moss, and bark. The materials were different, but the physics was identical. Now here's the wild part. Unbelievable. In Ukraine, at sites like Mezherish and Kostenki, experts uncovered something that stopped archaeologists cold the very first time they saw it. Real houses, not caves, not windbreaks, but fully engineered buildings, constructed entirely from bones of woolly mammoths. Just picture this. Mammoth skulls, each weighing over 200 pounds, used as foundation blocks. Massive curved tusks arranged into dome-shaped structures. Hundreds of smaller bones packed into the gaps, providing essential structural support. The entire home was covered in stitched layers of mammoth hide, tough enough to block the wind and tailored to shed snow. That isn't just basic survival, that is true architecture, and modern reconstructions of these homes have proved exactly what the archaeology suspected. A well-built mammoth bone home could keep the interior temperatures 40 to 50 degrees warmer than the freezing air outside with small fires. Even modern polar shelters with industrial insulation and electric heaters often do no better. Let that sink in. Ancient builders using only bones, animal hides, and stone tools match thermal performance of modern polar engineering. But none of it worked without fire, and fire wasn't just warmth. It was the whole operating system of Ice Age survival. The heating setups inside mammoth bone dwellings were advanced by any standard. One central hearth provided the main heat. Smaller secondary hearths were placed all around the perimeter, creating cozy zones for different tasks. Cooking over here, tool, crafting there, babies and elders nearest to those warmest spots. The layout wasn't random, it was planned on the treeless, and plains wood was rarely available. So our ancestors designed an ingenious fuel system. Mammoth dung dried and prepped. Bones. processed to burn incredibly hot. Chemical analysis of old hearths shows these fuels were carefully treated, not just tossed on the fire, but engineered for precise heat outputs. They weren't burning just any random fuel. They carefully managed fuel as a resource. And then we have the ventilation. This is where modern polar engineers get truly blown away. Without proper airflow, moisture from simple breathing and cooking builds up inside closed-off spaces. In freezing temperatures that condensation freezes, the structure fails from the inside. Digging up evidence at Kostenki reveals highly smart ventilation systems. Small vents near the ground pulled in fresh air. Larger vents near the top let warm, damp air float away. Now, here's the part most documentaries skip completely. What went down inside these shelters once the sun went down? Well, hundreds of thousands of years. Our ancestors hit the sack at sunset and woke before dawn, but they did not sleep the way we do. They slept in 2 shifts, 4 hours, then a wakeful gap of 1 to 2 hours, then 4 more hours until dawn. This wasn't insomnia. It was actually the normal human sleep pattern documented in history books across dozens of cultures and confirmed in a 1992 study by psychiatrist Thomas Weir, who found that when modern people are cut off from artificial light for a month, every single person naturally slips back to the same 2-phase pattern. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying the Juhwansi Bushmen of the Kalahari, one of the last tribes on Earth still living close to that original sleep pattern. She found that late-night talk was totally different from daytime chatter. During the day, 80% of talk was practical, about hunting and resources, but at night, around the fire, 81% of it was stories. That campfire was our first theater, our first classroom. The famous Venus figurines found at Stone Age sites, most were found in winter shelter setups. The cave art associated with this era were mostly created during those long months of winter isolation. The art that defined our species was not made in the warmth of summer. It was made by firelight and bone houses while the freezing steppe outside was locked in ice. Building a mammoth bone house took 2 to 3 weeks of hard labor by 8 to 10 adults, meaning construction had to begin in late summer or early autumn, well before the brutal freeze made work impossible. Analyzing tool wear and seasonal cycles confirms this fact. These weren't just reactive builders. They were planners with seasonal calendars ticking in their heads. Food storage was equally engineered. In permafrost zones, underground cold chambers connected to winter shelters through short tunnels acted as nature's own refrigerators, keeping meat frozen and accessible all winter long, even during the worst storms. Clothing relied on the same layered principle as those ancient shelters. Multiple layers of animal hides, each selected for specific thermal properties. Wolf fur, fox, Arctic hare. The innermost layer trapped body heat. The outer layer blocked out wind and moisture. Same physics as a modern winter coat. Built strictly from necessity 25,000 years before Gore-Tex even existed. When the shelter got damaged, which happened, often they fixed it immediately. Archaeological digs show ongoing upkeep during those winter seasons, replacing broken bones, patching hides, and refreshing insulation. This wasn't a shelter they built and just hoped for the best. It was a system managed constantly. Near the end of the Ice Age, as climates warmed and forests grew, this entire knowledge system was slowly abandoned. Not lost to catastrophe, just gradually made unnecessary. Modern Arctic engineers studying these ancient shelter remains are actually pretty surprised. Military Arctic training programs now teach shelter building methods based on archaeological reconstructions of these 20,000-year-old designs. Disaster relief organizations have adapted these techniques for emergency shelter building in extreme climates. We lost that knowledge, then spent 100 years decoding this with modern science, only to find our ancestors had already figured it out using bones and basic stone tools. Think about your thermostat. That little number on it represents a warmth your ancestors would have called a miracle, not because they could not stay warm. They definitely could and did in conditions way tougher than anything you will ever face, but because staying warm cost them everything. Each cozy night took weeks of planning, months of hard work, non-stop heavy lifting and engineering designs so incredibly precise that one tiny slip meant an entire family froze before morning. The stories you tell, your kids at bedtime, are direct versions of the myths told by firelight inside bone shelters on a frozen tundra. You did not invent warmth. You inherited it from the most brilliant minds to ever live who had nothing but freezing cold. Time and a refusal to die. Next time the cold hits and you click that home thermostat without even thinking, remember the cost to get here and realize for the very first time how incredibly rare it is to stay warm.